Hi, I'm Brian Malow, and we are live from the 73rd Lindau Nobel Laureate meeting in beautiful Lindau, Germany. It is the physics meeting this year, and there are 630 young scientists from 90 countries with 35 Nobel laureates. And this is an interview that is basically 4 years in the making. Saskia Plura is a physicist,
Yes.
German. You've moved around, but you're currently in Mainz. What institute?
I'm at the Institute of Nuclear Physics of the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Are you a nuclear physicist?
No, actually not. So the institute is actually not really named correctly because most of the people working there are actually not nuclear physicists, but we do hadron physics and particle physics. So, yeah.
When you say hadron physics, so that's certain kinds of particles, hadrons. What are hadrons and what aren't hadrons?
So hadrons are particles that are made up of quarks. So they're not elementary particles. So you have, for example, a proton is a hadron.
But an electron is an elementary particle.
Yes, yeah. So electrons cannot be divided into smaller particles, but hadrons can. So you have the proton, the neutron, for example, and then there are also some more exotic particles like lambda particles or pions, which are then also made of quarks. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason I say this is 4 years in the making is that Saskia and I first connected 4 years ago virtually because she had applied to the physics meeting that should have happened in 2020. And because of the COVID pandemic, you instead participated in some of the virtual activities that the Lindau meeting did. Since 2 years in a row there couldn't be an in-person meeting, Lindau created some new events. So this year is the 4th Sciathon, and those first 2 years there was also online science days, which was basically a virtual meeting. And you actually participated in a panel discussion.
Yeah, I actually had a panel discussion on dark matter, dark energy, and black holes together with Reinhard Genzer, Saul Perlmutter, Rainer Weiss, and David Gross.
It was 4 laureates,
fun. Yes, it was super cool. It was very fun, and also the fact that I was like just a student starting my master's thesis, it was very impressive to me to be able to speak to the laureates and actually discuss the theories and the new discoveries and studies currently being done on a panel, so I was very happy about that.
Excellent. And so, young scientists can only attend one Lindau meeting.
Yes.
And there's been an exception for this case that if you were only able to participate virtually, you could still attend a meeting. So you're here this year. And so
finally,
you had 4 years to anticipate this. What sort of things were you looking forward to without actually having been here? What were you hoping for? And you know what, let me ask you this too, as part of it. What do you tell your friends and family? Because they may not know what the Lindau Nobel Laureate meeting is. So how would you describe what the meeting is and what you were looking forward to before you even got here?
Yeah, okay, so obviously you have the Nobel laureates attending here, but I think this is just a small portion of the meeting. So what's really, really great about the meetings is that you have a big community of scientists from all over the world, from all kinds of different fields of physics. So it's not only particle physicists here, but we also have condensed matter physicists, we have quantum physicists, and we all come together here, have a very intensive week. Like I got up at 5:30 this morning, and I probably won't go to bed until midnight, so very intense week, and we discuss physics and we make new connections to people all over the world, and this is just so exciting. So I was really looking forward to that part.
Yeah, and so the meeting, we're still early in the week. We've had the opening ceremony on Sunday, and then one very full day yesterday, and today we're just starting the second real day of the meeting.
Yes.
But have you had any highlights already?
Oh yeah, definitely. So actually several. So yesterday there was an open exchange session with Anne Luyer, who won the Nobel Prize last year, and it was very fun talking to her and also meeting her as a real person, so not just through articles, through interviews, and really talking to her about her research, her life, her journey, and advice she has for young scientists. And also today, so this morning we had a partner breakfast with Rolex. And Brian Schmidt, also a Nobel laureate, was there. He is in astrophysics. And just after the breakfast, we had so many questions. And we simply bothered him and continued asking questions, pestered him with lots of different things. And so this turned actually in an impromptu science walk with him back to the Inselhalle, where we just kept asking about his research life. We talked about some funny stories he could share from his lab, and what he would recommend to us. So he actually gave me, for example, a recommendation for an Australian neutrino lab, dark matter search lab, which is underground in an old gold mine. And yeah, so it's actually pretty cool.
That's San Grasso, is that?
And the Gran Sasso is in Italy.
Oh,
so
okay.
this is like a new experiment currently being built. So very exciting.
Where did you say?
In Australia.
Oh, in Australia. Okay, sorry. Yeah, and that's where Brian Schmidt
Yes,
is.
yes. So that
okay.
was very nice.
Excellent. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to visit 2 underground neutrino labs. One in Sudbury, Ontario, Snow Lab, which is in an active nickel mine.
Oh, exciting.
So when you go down a mile underground, you go down with miners, and they go to the part where the active mine is, and then you go to the part where the lab is. And then in South Dakota, SURF is the Sanford Underground Research Facility, and that's in a former gold mine.
So same as
yes,
in Australia, yeah.
Yes. So let's talk about let's talk about the meeting a little more, and then I want to ask you about some about your own research interests. But tell me something else about the meeting, and since we're early in the week, is there still something you're looking forward to?
Oh yeah, definitely. So later on today, actually, there's a session by David Gross, who actually just gave a lecture. And so David Gross worked on strong interaction in particle physics. It's one of the 4 forces of nature.
The strong force.
Yeah, the strong force, yeah. And so he's having a session later today where he continues to talk about his research. I'm very excited for that one. And
excellent.
Yeah, also I'm very excited to hang out a little bit more with my Sciathon group from this year's Sciathon, because almost all of them are here for this year's meeting.
Nice.
So it's very exciting to finally meet them in person and talk a little bit more.
For the Sciathon, it's like a hackathon, and for 48 hours, a team of maybe up to 10 people.
Yeah, we were 9 people. Yeah.
9 people that didn't previously know each other, spread out over the globe, working together virtually for 48 hours on a project. And so I should point out too, like this year we have young scientists from 90 or 91 countries. So it's a very international meeting. And in fact, so also something you touched on is you mentioned science walks, and there are lectures by the laureates, but the open exchange is another kind of session. And can you describe what an open exchange is?
So an open exchange is basically a session with one Nobel laureate and only the young scientists. So there's like no press, there's no newspapers,
no staff.
No staff, just a young scientist and a Nobel laureate. And you get 1.5 hours to ask questions. And these can range from anything. These can range from the scientific viewpoint to personal questions. So for example, we talked about Anne moving to Sweden and whether she left like family behind in France, or about how she feels about women in physics, or just a lot of different topics. And it was very fun, very exciting. Yeah.
And that was with who?
Anne.
She's one of our most recent laureates
yes.
in physics just last year. Excellent. And so, yeah, a lot of the sessions, all the lectures are recorded and available online almost immediately afterwards. That's true with a lot of the sessions. But the open exchanges,
no
one else is
personal.
allowed. Just the laureate and the young scientists, and they can talk about anything they want, science or so many other kinds of life topics.
I mean, there's like almost every single topic you can think of. You can ask questions to anything.
That's really cool. So you mentioned her talking about being a woman in science. Is that a topic that you're a woman and you're in science? Is that a topic that interests you, that you have something to say about?
I mean, definitely. So actually, when I was first starting my bachelor's degree, I didn't think that being a woman in physics was something special, because it was like, okay, well, I'm just here for the science. I'm just here to work. But as you continue to go through your studies, you start to realize that there are fundamental differences in how women in science are treated and how men in science are treated. It's getting a lot better than it has been in recent years, previous years before. But yeah, I mean, it is a topic, and I don't think you can remove, like, I'm both a woman and a scientist, so it's both something that is important to me.
Yeah. So let's talk about your science. Tell me a little bit about, did you always know you wanted to be a scientist? And did you always know you wanted to be a physicist?
So I always wanted to do science. So I was the type of child that you would put in the garden and I would just start making up my own experiments. Like, I was definitely annoying my parents at some point, I think. So for example, I wanted to raise like some animals and in a cup and trying to see whether they could survive. And yeah, my parents were not happy when I brought like a bunch of insects back into our house. Physics came later, actually. So I think the first idea where I first started to get a glimpse into physics was I was super interested in the universe due to my father and I watching a lot of sci-fi shows, so Star Trek, Babylon 5. I'm a big nerd in that sense.
Good, me too.
Yeah, so whenever he came back from work, he would sit down and we would just start watching TV a little. And then afterwards, we started discussing. So we discussed about the universe, whether alien life is possible, space travel, warp drive, for example. And so yeah, that started the curiosity. We also, my grandfather got a telescope at some point, so we looked at the moon. But then in school, at first, I was not interested in physics. So we started with mechanics and optics, and I hated it because I thought it was so boring. And then we moved on to electrodynamics, and this is where the interest started. So I suddenly became curious. So my father studied electrical engineering, and he taught me a few things, and was constantly pestering my physics teacher, oh, when are we going to look at transistors? And he had to tell me, this is not part of the curriculum. So this is what started to get me into science. And particle physics actually came later. So I first got into physics through astronomy, astrophysics. And then there were some science camps in Germany through the MINT-EC collaboration. And so I first attended an astrophysics camp, loved it. And then at some point I found an astroparticle physics camp. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds fairly similar. It's just going to be very similar to it. I don't know what astroparticle physics is. It was not similar. It was very different, but very exciting. So we learned about IceCube, the neutrino telescope in the Antarctic, how like they live among the penguins, basically. Super fun story. And then they said, like, oh yeah, if you're interested in that, you can do a 2-week internship at CERN. I was like, okay, take me, I'm sold. And I actually got to do this internship later. So my first application was actually denied because I wasn't 16 yet, and they didn't tell me beforehand that you needed to be 16. But then I got to go to CERN and explore CERN, learn about Atlas. So I was part of the Atlas collaboration there, and it was amazing how you could just, some professor from Oxford came up, for example, to me, and I mean, I was a tiny high school student, and he just came up like, oh yeah, do you have a minute to discuss? I would really like to hear more from you, a student, and I'm also gonna buy you the coffee, so really you do not have to worry about your expenses. I'm gonna buy the coffee, and we talked for like over an hour, and it was so exciting. So that got me into particle physics.
Excellent. So you went from not being interested in physics to being interested in so many different fields of physics.
Yes.
Because I've seen on the list of your research interests, it looks pretty varied. And I know that right now you haven't even mentioned dark matter, and that's sort of the area that you're focused on a lot nowadays.
Yeah. So I'm focused on dark matter searches, so new physics searches, and also precision tests of the standard model, so precision measurements. And well, you're now probably wondering what are these precision measurements?
Exactly what I was wondering.
So precision measurement means that, well, the standard model has a bunch of observables, so roughly 20, and these observables tune the theory. And so
when you say observables, do you mean particles?
I mean like just variables that you can measure.
Okay.
Like so, bunch of stuff like this.
Like things like charge and spin and.
Or like momentum of magnetic momentum.
Okay.
And so. The thing with the standard model is that it's a very fun theory. It works pretty well. It works too well. because we know it's wrong, but we cannot see, currently cannot pinpoint where exactly it went wrong, because we know there's dark matter out there, but it's not included in the standard model yet. So you do like precision measurements of the standard model. You measure these observables really, really precisely, because then if you see some kind of discrepancy, you can say like, oh, I need to look closer at that one, and that's a way to find dark matter. And so I'm not directly measuring one of those 20 observables. What I'm interested in is, for example, the proton form factor. So form factor is a complicated word, I know. Basically, once you have a particle that is not an electron, you have a particle that has, it's not a singular point in space, but it has a density, a distribution, and the charge of the particle is distributed over its area, over its radius. And the thing is that to describe this in calculations, the calculations are all based on pinpoint-like particles. So you have to introduce some kind of function to describe the charge distribution, and this is the form factor. And so this is very fun. But the form factor, for example, of the proton, which is one of the most common particles out there, has not been measured in all areas. So there's still, we call it the unphysical region. It's not unphysical in that sense, it's just that we haven't been able to access it before with accelerators. So this area hasn't been measured before. And this is, well, bad for us, because we use these calculations to predict outcomes of reactions. And if we do not know what's happening there, how can we predict the outcome, right?
Right. So it's interesting because to most of us, I'm not a scientist, and to most of us, we've always thought, oh, a proton is this particle. A proton is a particle. It's very simple. A proton,
it's actually not.
like the nucleus of a hydrogen atom is just a proton. It's just a simple proton. But a proton is not a simple thing at all, is
there's
it?
like so much we still don't know about the proton. And I mean, this feels bad to say this as a particle physicist, but right now we know we can describe about 5% of our universe. 5%. I mean, we have been doing particle physics for decades, and we still can only describe 5%. So this feels a bit awkward.
And the 5% you mean because in recent decades, dark matter and dark energy have been discovered, but they're unknown, but they have definite effects that are measurable, so we know they exist.
We know they
but
exist.
You don't know what they are.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So, and that makes up the bigger part of the universe that's everyone that so many people are working on, but don't know what it is, right?
Yeah, so we have no idea of what dark matter is. I mean, there are a lot of theories, different models, and since there are some astrophysical observations, so indirect observations, we call them, of dark matter, so we know it's there, but we don't know what it is. We can give some limits on the parameters it has, the properties, but obviously there's still a huge parameter space left. So we need to work on that, really.
Well, we could talk for a long time, but let me just ask you if you have any advice for young scientists, just young scientists in general, and possibly young scientists who might be considering attending the Lindau meeting.
Yeah, definitely. So first, be curious. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Really, you might think, especially if you're starting university, oh, I cannot ask the professor this question. Just go for it. They like questions. They like to talk about their research, and they won't mind if you feel like it's a stupid question. Chances are it's actually not a stupid question. A lot of people in the room have it, but they're too afraid to say it. And also, try to communicate your research. If you try to communicate your interests, just talk about what you're doing, get people excited for it, and just ask for opportunities as well. Just walk up to people and speak to them, especially in particle physics. So we are fundamental science, and I mean, usually particle physics is not really covered by general media or being talked about in the public, and we love talking about our research. We really love, I could go on for hours. So just walk up to us, ask questions, do not be afraid, and have fun in research also. That's also very important. Have fun. Do something that you enjoy.
Excellent. Thank you so much.